Good evening, Bermuda. I hope that everyone had a wonderful Labor Day weekend. Of course, I join with the country in passing condolences to those persons who lost loved ones over this weekend, some in very tragic circumstances, others in very sudden and unexpected circumstances. During today's briefing, we will have an update on the latest regarding the novel coronavirus and other matters from the Minister of Health. I will provide an update on the supplementary employment benefit and additional tax relief which have been granted to persons in the country. Before those announcements, I wish to start with the good news that the Minister for the Cabinet Office, the Honorable Wayne Ferbert, announced earlier today. The Department of Statistics has compiled the 2020 edition of the employment briefs, and Minister Ferbert released the data earlier today. The employment briefs provides a count of all filled jobs in Bermuda's labor market by selected demographics, occupational groups, and other variables. It allows readers to examine what is happening in Bermuda's workforce. Among many other comparisons, the report examines year-on-year changes in employment and also measures year-on-year changes this year for the first time in income. I am pleased to report that there were more people working in 2019 than there were in 2018, and there are more in 2018 than there were in 2017. In other words, Bermuda is moving upwards when it comes to job creation, with each year more people working than the year before. Specifically, when it comes to the 2019 figures, 523 more jobs were added to the Bermuda economy in 2019 versus 2018. That increase in the number of jobs of 523 in 2019 is the highest measured increase in jobs since 2006, or 13 years ago. The report shows that there were 33,855 jobs in 2018 and 34,378 jobs in 2019. If we take the 2-year period between 2017 and 2019, there has been a total increase of 719 jobs, or a 2.1% rise. One thing that I would like to say at this time is that a preliminary figure is given during the budget statement of the job figures for 2019, and then the Department of Statistics finalizes the number and puts out a revised number during this time period. The initial number for last year was a lower figure. It was actually 69 positions lower. So in their revision, they've actually added 69 additional jobs, which they found were created in 2019, which brings us to that number of 523 more jobs, or 719 jobs over the last 2 years. This increase in jobs in the economy, though before the pandemic, is evidence that as a country, we have made collective progress in setting a firm foundation for our economic growth. It is one thing to have more jobs, which obviously means more people worked in 2018 and 2019 than in 2017. But are they working for the same, more, or less money? The report showed that not only are there more jobs, it shows that average salaries and wages increase more than the rate of inflation. Staying ahead of the cost of living is a priority for every working person, and ensuring salaries exceed inflation indicates that these jobs are beneficial. With respect to employment income, the median gross annual income for Bermudians increased by $1,018, or 1.7%, from $59,094 to $60,112. In short, more Bermudians are working than in 2017, and were being paid more in 2019. Interestingly, the average across the median gross annual income for non-Bermudians declined by $970, or 1.3%, during the same period. I recommend that anyone who needs a new job, is trying to switch careers, or is trying to determine which retraining is best for them, to take a look at the report, identify the sectors where employers are hiring, identify the sectors where there are a significant numbers of non-Bermudians that are working, and make an appointment with the Department of Workforce Development armed with your desires, your commitment, and the relevant and recent data. You will remember that the Minister of Labor last week laid out a comprehensive re-employment program for Bermudians who have been displaced from work. And one of the focuses of that was making sure that places where there are a large number of work permit holders, that Bermudians can be retrained to fill those positions upon the expiration of some of those work permits. I think that it is important for all persons to go ahead and look at this information, and the information can be found on the government website at www.gov.bm. I now invite the Minister of Health to provide her update to the country this evening. Minister?
Thank you, Premier. Good afternoon, everyone. Between Sunday and today, there were 2,140 test results received by the Ministry of Health, and 2 were positive for COVID-19. Both cases were contacts of known cases. 1 was a resident and 1 was a visitor. In a first for Bermuda, one of the positive cases was a child who had been quarantining with their parents, so the results were not unexpected. There is no public health risk, as the case were already in isolation before the testing positive. Bermuda now has 177 total confirmed positive cases, and their status is as follows. 159 have recovered, and there are 9 active cases who are all under active public health monitoring. None are hospitalized or in critical care, and the total deceased remains at 9. The average age of all of our confirmed positive cases is 57, and the age range of all of our positive cases is from 10 to 101 years. The source of all local cases is as follows. 66 are imported, 90 are local transmission with a known contact, 19 are local transmission with an unknown contact, and 2 are under investigation. Bermuda's country status remains at sporadic cases, and our real-time reproduction number remains under 1. You will recall that as the country was reopening, we established reopening indicators that we publish on our website and update regularly. I have to highlight to the public that our performance on these indicators has deteriorated since reopening. In particular, we have seen consistently in the red zone for wearing of masks and physical distancing, as reported by the Public Health IQ. Now, as schools reopen, we are seeing some better behaviors return to our day-to-day lives, and I implore you to both follow the physical distance guidance as well as report on Health IQ. Daily reports have declined, and we need this important tool to make sure that COVID transmission is prevented. I would like now to issue a reminder to all travelers that as of midnight tonight, we will launch an approval process for all travel authorization applications. Travel authorizations will need to be purchased between 1 and 3 days prior to travel. This is to allow every single pre-departure test submitted to be reviewed and approved as part of each application. This measure was made necessary because there were instances of positive cases where invalid pre-departure tests were uploaded. The new vetting process will prevent future cases like this. A valid pre-departure test result must meet the following criteria. Display the traveler's full name and date of birth. The date of the test must be within 10 days of departure. The test results must be negative. The test type must be a PCR test. The test must be performed by an accredited laboratory, and it must display the full name of the laboratory and contact information for the laboratory. If a traveler's pre-departure test result is valid, they will be issued a travel authorization. Visitors who do not submit a valid pre-departure test result will be notified and their test is not valid, and they will be given the opportunity to submit a valid result. The response will be customized to tell you the reason for your rejection, such as if your test result did not show your full name. It gives you the opportunity to correct it, and you can contact the COVID-19 helpline for further advice. If a visitor cannot submit a valid test result, they will be denied a travel authorization and will not be able to travel to Bermuda. Residents who cannot provide a valid pre-departure test will still automatically be issued a travel authorization, but will quarantine until they have their day 8 negative result, or if they decline all testing, until they have a negative day 14 test. Travel authorizations will be vetted between 9 a.m. and 8 p.m. Any traveler needing an emergency travel authorization issued the day of travel must contact the COVID hotline. Before I close, I want to clarify a point regarding voting by quarantined persons. There is no system for voting online if you are quarantined. People can, however, register online for advanced polling, whereby a presiding officer will attend their home so that they can vote in person. And finally, with schools reopening later this month, I wanted to reinforce the restrictions and guidance around children returning to school following travel. So to be clear, school-aged children who travel abroad and return home should ideally remain at home for 14 days, participating in the mobile quarantine, which we've spoken about previously, as well as conduct themselves with remote learning. However, if it is acceptable but not preferred for children to return to school following their parents' day 8 negative test results. These guidelines are exactly the same for children who have a household member returning from travel or an overseas visitor staying in their household. And finally, there have been questions raised recently regarding the medically preferred and accurate method for conducting a temperature check, specifically whether it should be taken on the wrist or the forehead. Our advice is to follow the manufacturer's instructions regarding optimal use for that specific device. This will prevent a false reading. I want to reassure members of the public that there is no science at all behind the false claims currently circulating online that temperature checks performed on the forehead using infrared thermometers interfere with the pineal gland, and that is the part of the brain that regulates your sleep. That video is not accurate, and parents, we suggest that you disregard it absolutely. Stay safe, Bermuda, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister of Health. And I'd certainly like to commend your testing teams and the government laboratory. Certainly 2,000 results reported today is an incredible feat. I would like to advise that earlier this afternoon, the Cabinet reviewed and approved the Supplemental Unemployment Benefit Regulations 2020. The regulations will be officially gazetted shortly. The Minister of Labor informs me that members of the public who have already applied for the benefit and been processed by the Department of Financial Assistance will receive their initial payment in the coming week. If you have not obtained the application forms or completed and fully submitted these forms and you require assistance, please obtain the forms from the Department of Financial Assistance, which is located here at Global House in 43 Church Street, Hamilton. The supplemental benefit was put in place to ensure that persons who may not be eligible for financial assistance are able to get financial support and health insurance from the government of Bermuda. I understand that the application process is rigorous, but like every other COVID-19 development, we must ensure our people's well-being and balance that obligation with the necessary protections for the public purse against fraud and abuse. So I repeat, those persons who have been approved for the supplementary benefit will receive their first payments later this week. And if you are in need of assistance, please make sure you contact the Department of Financial Assistance and register for the supplementary employment benefit. The Minister of Labor laid out that the process has been simplified, but it is important that persons take advantage of the support which the government has made available to them. Due to yesterday's holiday, the Cabinet Committee on Reopening the Economy did not meet yesterday to review changes to public health emergency regulations. That's a mosquito. Public health emergency regulations. There has been a request from various liquor license establishments to review the opening hour that require closures at midnight. I can state that the Cabinet Committee will be reviewing that request next week and will be able to make an announcement as any changes of which may be made to the opening hours for liquor license establishment at next week's press conference. Additionally, the Minister of National Security will be working to streamline the process of large group exemptions so they can be returned to event organizers more quickly. I do recognize that there have been some challenges and some delays. It is a new process. There is a significant number and volume of applications which are coming in, and we are going to work to make sure that we can streamline that process to ensure that persons are holding events which are safe, that are not risking any further outbreaks, but will also allow the proper health protocols be put in place. And those changes will be shared at next week Tuesday's press conference following consideration of the Cabinet Committee next week Monday and the full Cabinet next week Tuesday. Among many sectors that were severely impacted by this pandemic was the taxi industry. The shelter in place and lack of cruise and air visitors severely reduced earnings in this industry. Though many drivers are back earning funds again, the volumes are not what they were a year ago. Recognizing the challenges faced by taxi operators, the government will provide a 50% payroll tax break to assist the sector. Accordingly, the annual charge of $1,000 that must be paid at registration will be reduced to $500. This is good news for our taxi operators. While our island is seeing an increase in visitors, and with more hotels and flights, there will be more people coming to Bermuda to visit and work, which will create additional business for our taxi drivers and our economy as a whole. But recognizing the challenges that they did have, we wanted to ensure that relief was provided for their annual licensing fee. In closing, I would like to allay any concerns that people may have about their safety when voting in the general election next month or advanced polling next week. As I have said previously, our main priority is your health and safety. Second to that is your economic and social well-being. Accordingly, just like every other development of our new normal process that the government has influenced or created, the solutions for voting have been thought out based on science, Bermudianized for our needs, and will be as user-friendly as possible. Accordingly, as I announced last week, that the parliamentary registrar will be supplied with whatever she deems necessary to protect public health as voters go to the polls, in addition to making testing capacity available for poll workers. And I am confident that the registrar, working with the Ministry of Health, will introduce the appropriate protocols at every polling station. We will never risk your lives, our public health officials' hard work, or Bermuda's envious reputation for managing COVID-19 by taking a shortcut or any other chances at our polling stations. I will also remind everyone that when faced with the greatest public health challenge our island has seen in modern times, Bermuda has fared well due to collaboration and a sacrosanct commitment to Bermudians and the leadership that the events required. And some of these items are worth repeating for themselves. As I have commended the Minister of Health for Bermuda being the highest ranked country per capita in the Americas region for testing per capita. With today's results, with over 2,000 results returned, Bermuda will surpass the UAE and will again be ranked number 6 in the world in terms of testing per capita. The excellent work of the Department of Health testing teams and the Government of Bermuda Molecular Diagnostic Laboratory means that we produce results among the fastest in the world, with most visitors getting their results within 12 hours. The protective measures at the L.F. Wade International Airport have received global recognition and praise, confirming that Bermuda has the most extensive border protection measures in the world, which has allowed us to safely reopen our tourism industry to put Bermuda back to work. And it's important to note that drive-through testing at various pop-up testing is still available throughout the country and free of charge for Bermuda residents to make sure that we keep count of what is going on in our island. I make these points to show that our people-centered approach was the right way to go. In managing this crisis, whether Bermudians were overseas, trying to get home, or were on island, whether a person was a homeowner or without a home, or whether they were quarantined by the government or not infected, government always put people first and ensured that both science and our way of life were our guiding principle. The approach produced results that are the envy of the world, and tangible proof that working together to build broad consensus with strong leadership is the best way to approach this health crisis. But it is important to know that it is not time to let our guard down. We can see very clearly that there are resurgence in cases in many countries which had previously had the virus under control. And we will continue to keep rules in place that are designed to allow our economy to operate so that Bermudians can continue to provide for their families. We are proud of the example that Bermuda continues to set for the world. We have successfully managed this pandemic, and we will continue to do so with everyone's health and safety as our top priority. With that time, I'm happy to take questions from members of the media at this time.
Good evening, Don Burgess, Bermuda Broadcasting. Health Minister, with regard to this 10-year-old that's tested positive, when will the student be allowed to go back to school, and will the school be notified?
The individual that we spoke about will be, oh dear, hang on one moment. The date of their report was the 8th of September, so 14 days from the 8th. That's today. So 14 days from today, 2 weeks from today, then their quarantine will be lifted, and they will be able to return to school following that.
And will the school be notified that they had that student was positive?
I do not know that answer, I'm afraid, but I do not believe that would be the case, because we don't normally notify persons that that's a private information. So I don't want to confirm, but I don't believe that they would be notified in these circumstances. No.
Okay, thank you. With public schools set to reopen next week, what is the biggest issues the government is facing before students arrive?
Do you want to answer that about public schools?
Well, I'm happy to. I will let you know that when we said that we were doing these press conferences, that we said that clearly it's important. We can't have multiple ministers at a press conference giving social distancing requirements. But I do know that tomorrow, the Minister of Education and the Minister of Transport, and I believe with the Commissioner of Education as well, will be giving a press conference laying out all of the items which are in place for the reopening of schools, number one, for the efficient and safe transportation of students to our schools, in addition to the Commissioner of Education, who will be able to provide any operational queries. What I can say regarding public schools set to open next week, some of the biggest issues right now are being confronted by the Ministry of Public Works, making sure that our schools are ready and available. I know that there was an extensive list that was provided by the Minister of Education last week when the Committee for the Reopening of the Economy met. Clearly, with the lack of time or some of the compressed time period over the summer, there was certainly some work that did not get done at the timely basis. But the Minister of Public Works is confident that these items are in hand and will be ready for when school reopens next week. So I would say that's certainly one of our challenges. But I think that we've been successful in making sure that we've communicated with parents, communicated with students. Last week when I went home, my daughter, my son likes to pretend that he's in school as well, but my daughter was participating in a Zoom town hall, which was hosted by the Commissioner of Education for students. And I know that they've had over, I think, 30 different town halls. I know the minister has visited a number of schools, and we're trying to make sure that we instill confidence as well. I know that we are doing whatever we can to make sure that teachers feel safe, parents feel safe, students feel safe, and we do believe that with the extensive testing and surveillance that we're doing in our community, that it will be safe. And I am looking forward to next Monday when I drop Nia off to Northlands Primary on Monday.
Thank you. Across the world, we've seen a lot of countries working on the vaccines. We now have 9 that are in phase 3 and 3 that are in limited trials right now. Half of these are from China, or 4 from China, 3 from the U.S. Russia and the U.K. also have ones that are close. Which of these countries will Bermuda likely get its vaccine from the quickest, and why? And are we registered in the queue?
There are a number of options that are currently being explored by Bermuda with respect to acquisition of the vaccine. Through the United Kingdom, they have agreed to procure part of their supply to some of the OTCs, including Bermuda. In addition to that, through PAHU, we are also working with them to be able to also secure vaccines from the COVAX facility. Insofar as where we get them from, that still is part of the discussion, but we will certainly be looking to get the best candidate, regardless of what country it originates from.
Thank you. Is government discussing COVID-19 vaccine requirements for teachers, students, and essential frontline healthcare workers? Are there issues with making it mandatory as opposed to not requiring it?
With respect to the mandatory requirement of all vaccines, that is certainly not something that's under consideration by the government.
Okay, thank you. The government has made pre-testing mandatory for all air arriving visitors to the island. Can you say how many visitors who had a pre-test then tested positive after arriving in Bermuda versus the total number of visitors arriving in Bermuda over the same period of time?
Thank you, John. Out of the 6 COVID cases that were imported by visitors between the time period of the 1st of July and the 5th of September, the results are as follows. There were 4 tested positive on their arrival, 2 tested positive on day 4, and none tested positive on their day 8 or their day 14 test. And with respect to the 23 imported cases between that same time period, 19 tested positive on arrival, 3 tested positive on their day 4 test, 1 tested positive on their day 8 test, and none tested positive on their day 14 test.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon. Owen Johnson Barnes with the Royal Gazette. Now, obviously, Bermuda's doing extremely well when it comes to testing numbers. We've been ranked among the top of the world. Do we have a strong enough flow that we can continue this rate and possibly even increase it should tourists continue to come to Bermuda?
We have secured sufficient testing supplies to last us many, many months. We are constantly procuring them. So as we deplete our testing before they're completely depleted, of course. But as we see that we're ramping up our testing because we've got more visitors that are arriving, particularly in this month, we are still in the process of continuing to source more supplies. Once the saliva test has been validated, we will certainly be utilizing that for the lower risk category individuals. However, we have absolutely no doubt that we will have sufficient testing supplies to continue this aggressive testing regime. And again, we continue to procure testing supplies on a regular basis.
Now, you said that government will be a little bit stricter when it comes to the pre-testing requirements, making sure that full names are attached. Is there any government concern about people providing fake tests? I know I recently came back from overseas, and I was told, quite frankly, that I could not get a pre-test unless I had symptoms, and it would be easier for me to get a fake test.
Thank you for that question, Don. That is exactly why we've changed the process so that effective this evening at midnight, all travel authorizations will require a PCR test to be uploaded, because we have seen a couple of instances where persons have attempted to upload either a fake test, a non-PCR test, a pregnancy test, or a bar scanner.
Now, is there any sort of penalty for those who have done that?
There are penalties under the legislation. However, we're certain that when we enforce this new requirement as of this evening, it won't be able to happen, because you will not be able to receive the vetted confirmation of the travel authorization, if you do not upload a proper PCR valid test based on the criteria that I spoke about insofar as it was 7 days from departure, your full name, date of birth, the name of the testing laboratory where the test was taken, etc. So following this evening, midnight this evening, if the TA does not have the uploaded PCR test meeting the criteria that I mentioned, then you will not be able to receive a travel authorization. And we're encouraging all individuals to recognize that the process will be processed between 9 a.m. and 8 p.m. So you must do it between 1 and 3 days prior to your travel.
Thank you very much. Now, hurricane season is starting to pick up. We have 2 tropical storms active in the Atlantic. And, of course, we are still in the midst of this pandemic. Can you tell us what preparations are in place so that should a storm come to strike Bermuda, that these measures can still continue. Obviously, gathering outside Pro Post Office might be a little hard if we're being hit by a storm.
That is correct. In fact, as the Premier indicated, I think later on this week, actually, you'll have the opportunity, or sometime soon, to hear directly from the Minister of National Security. However, there was an EMO meeting that was held last week, and health are part of that process. And the deliberations do include what would exist in circumstances of a tropical storm or a hurricane, as well as it ties into our COVID testing. Clearly, we need to continue to test as much as we possibly can, but if the circumstances are such that we're in the midst of a hurricane, then that might have to be stalled momentarily until it's safe for people to clearly vacate their properties for the purposes of testing. So those are factors that are being discussed at the EMO meetings, as are led by the Minister of National Security.
Thank you very much, Mr. Premier. Obviously, we have an election coming up as well. And
Who told you that, Owen?
Some rumor I heard. Now, with the storms in the Atlantic, obviously, if a hurricane were to land on October 1st or around then, I imagine things would be pushed back. But it does bring to mind the question of why isn't there a policy that perhaps general elections and referendums shouldn't be called in the September to October window when Bermuda is extremely likely to be struck by a storm? It could be argued that it might make sense to have even not a law, but a policy to prevent the duplicated expenses that result from a delayed election.
Well, I can't comment as to why Bermuda doesn't have a policy like that. Do I think that a policy like that should be in place? No, I don't. I believe that democracy must continue, and I know that there are provisions inside of our law in the case of something like that, if there had to be a delay of a number of days, that the provisions allow that. And I think we just move forward with those items.
And, of course, with the coming election, there will be a third party who's led by your predecessor as head of the Progressive Labor Party. I was wondering what your thoughts on this are. I mean, is this a question of your leadership skills amongst people who had traditionally supported the Progressive Labor Party?
I wouldn't go that far. I would say I think that it speaks to the health of our democracy, that there are new parties and independents who want to put their names forward to represent the people, and we welcome them and look forward to hearing more about their ideas and vision for the country. We've set out clearly where it is that we stand. We know what we are capable of in government. We recognize the progress of which we've made insofar as building our economy and making our country more fair. And so we look forward to contesting the election. We look forward to nomination day, where I'm sure that all parties will put up a full slate of candidates, and then we will be on to next week in the election.
And I guess my final question, as the pandemic is hopefully going to be coming to a close in the near future, we say with all fingers and toes crossed, these weekly press conferences, I think these may continue even afterwards, so that gives the government in power a continued means to speak to the public and for the public to ask questions.
I think that it's healthy that the members of the media are able to ask questions from the government. I'm sure that the Minister of Health might disagree with you that the pandemic is coming to a close any time soon. I think that that is wishful thinking, and I know that the Ministry of Health is preparing for what will happen with a combination of flu season and the coronavirus and the impacts of which that's having. I mean, the United States, they are predicting that their death toll will double to 400,000 before the end of the year. So this is by no means over, and I don't want anyone in any way, shape, or form to think that it's over, and we're under no illusion that it is over. We do think that the press conferences were something that was useful. We do think that a weekly update that allows members of the media to ask the questions to the leader of the country and also to the Minister of Health are beneficial. We have moved these to Tuesday so that we can give information fresh coming out of our cabinet meetings. And so on that level, and I think that we've had press conferences with members of the government to continue to provide information. So whether it's the Minister of Labor talking about plans to get Bermudians back to work, whether it's the Minister of Finance talking about his economic and fiscal plan to provide more support for there to be more activities and jobs inside of the economy, I think that those things are important. Or tomorrow when the Minister of Education will speak. So we're going to continue to relay information to the public and allow members of the media to ask questions if they choose. Do you wish to add anything?
No, but if I can provide an update for your colleague that asked the question concerning the disclosure of the schools with respect to the 10-year-old that we spoke about, public health does not disclose the name of the school unless there was a requirement for us to do contact tracing. And in this circumstance, that doesn't apply.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Trevor Lindsay, TNN. Yesterday, Premier, Minister Jason Hayward disclosed for successful supplementary unemployment benefits applicants that are not insured, insurance will be made provided for them. Do you have a number of these possible applicants, and how will this be funded?
I don't have a number of the possible applicants, but what I can say is that one of the challenges that you have in a pandemic, and one of the challenges of which you'll have when persons are out of work, is that when persons don't have health insurance, they don't keep up their regular, I would say, are not able to take care of their health. The last thing we want is someone who's unemployed to get into have a catastrophic illness or have something bad happen to them, and then they're stuck with a large debt from the hospital or other means. So the Minister of Labor thought through this process. It's something that has been budgeted and provided for, as the Minister of Finance stated when he gave his overview of where we are over this current fiscal year. And we think that it is the right choice to make sure that persons who are on this supplemental employment benefit, if they are unable to be on health insurance from possibly a working spouse or someone else, that they will be able to be covered with this health insurance. It will be the basic insurance, the hospital insurance program, HIP. It'll be the basic insurance, but it will provide some level of coverage for those persons so that they can be covered in case of any catastrophic illness. And that's the last thing we want to happen. So I think it just demonstrates that the government is being cautious, but the government is also making sure that we are providing these things which will prevent further health challenges down the road.
Thank you. Over the weekend, Premier, your party held a gala fundraising banquet. How successful was this event for raising funds for the election campaign?
Trevor, that is your word for it, a gala. And of course, you know, with the speculation that your friends of the One Bermuda Alliance keep putting out in the media and talking about tables and all the rest, I'll just go with their calculation. If it was $20,000 a table, and seeing that there are only 5 tables and 40 people there appropriately spaced, persons can do the math. But from our perspective, we were happy that people continue to support the Progressive Labor Party. And as I stated on my social media, that the Progressive Labor Party is constantly engaging in the community, connecting with Bermudians at events, in meetings, on the phone, and on the doorstep. And on Saturday night, we raised funds for the continued work of the Bermuda Progressive Labor Party. And so whether that are the back-to-school giveaways that we are famous for, whether it's grocery vouchers, of which have been given at numerous times throughout this pandemic from the party, whether it's the food giveaways or the food that we are providing and preparing inside of our constituencies, seniors' teas, Christmas hampers, or political education, we are proud of our work, and we remain committed to building a better and fair Bermuda. And given that our core values are clear, we welcome the support of anyone who seeks to support our effort to build a more progressive Bermuda that puts Bermudians first.
Thank you. Your public relations officer made an accusation, made a claim that TNN did not try to obtain comment from yourself on Saturday night. Are you willing to confirm that you declined comment when asked by yours truly on Saturday night?
What I think the public relations officer said is that if TNN wants to have a comment, that they know the way to make sure to send a comment by email. And our email, I don't want to turn this into political press conference, but I think that it is clearly posted. And Mr. Lindsay, I would encourage you, before you post your stories, if you wish to have a comment from the Progressive Labor Party, feel free to send an email to info@plp.bm, and I'm certain that the Progressive Labor Party will provide you a response.
I guess my next question would be, if you're the top man and you're the leader of the party, why not, and as I asked you, why not get a response from you directly?
I don't have any change to the answer which I gave before, Mr. Lindsay, but I can state that you were here and I provided a response to you on September 27th about something, but you printed a story today ignoring that response, so it goes.
And on that note, TNN was reliably informed by well-placed individuals within the party that you were very much aware of the Roth Commission matter 5 months prior to the truth that came out. Not the last incident, but the first 2 incidents. So can you confirm that you were very much aware 5 months prior to the last incident?
Trevor, on September 27th, you made the same accusation to me. I told you quite plainly and fully when I first found out about this accusation, and I think it was 3 Wednesdays ago. You asked me at that time, and you had said, there were not emails that were sent to your account and all the rest. I left the press conference. I searched my official email accounts and also my private email accounts, and I found no such communication. If you have any evidence to the contrary, you're welcome to produce that. I have no recollection of being informed of these items before. I learned about them 3 weeks ago. If I was aware of them prior, I think that is something that I would have remembered. I think it would have been something that I would have shared with members of the party and all the rest. We became aware at that time. I know the persons who were aware, one person who told me. I am confident that I was not aware of those items. And as I said on that time, on September 27th, that I found out on the Wednesday before.
Thank you. With the figures you just released, or with the figures that Minister Furbert released today and you reinstated, how does these numbers reflect today's unemployment numbers?
They're not a reflection of today's unemployment numbers. Today's unemployment numbers are not known. I'm sure there'll be a measurement. We can tell from how many persons were working and how many persons are not working now. So that gives an identification. But I think what the numbers do prove is that prior to the pandemic, our economy was on a strong trajectory. And so when you look at the strongest job growth that occurred in 2019 for the last 13 years, I think that is proof positive that economic policies of the Progressive Labour Party government are working. So as I said, it's a struggle now, but the Minister of Finance laid out a comprehensive economic fiscal plan last week, Wednesday. Unfortunately, it did not receive that much news coverage, but I would hope and encourage you, Trevor, if you want to post a link to that press conference again so people can actually understand what that plan was. And last week, Thursday, the Minister of Labor unveiled a comprehensive re-employment strategy for Bermudians to make sure that those persons that are unemployed can return to work. So we continue the work which is necessary to go ahead and put Bermudians back to work, continue the work that's necessary to strengthen and rebuild our economy. And I think that the efforts that we have shown to time, the fact that we've been able to build a robust testing and surveillance system that has enabled so many persons to return to work, enabled our tourism industry to get off to a good start, and enable more flights and more hotels to open, will stand our economy in good stead as we move forward. Welcoming back business travel, positioning ourselves for next year's tourism season, and making sure that this winter's tourism season, with our strong testing regime, provides more opportunities than other seasons during the winter, as there won't be a lot of other places to go, but Bermuda will be available, I think will be helpful. So I am confident that we'll be able to get more and more persons back to work, and what has been laid out by the Minister of Labor will certainly assist Bermudians in getting back to work.
Appreciate that. My last question, Premier. There's a very large number of seniors that are having extremely hard times going through the checks and balances of the financial assistance or making application. Could there be a separate window or a separate office that would help these seniors to navigate through this process, which is extremely hard for them? Is there any possibility of that?
What I know is that the Minister of Labor, who has responsibility for financial assistance, has made a number of accommodations to assist various persons to make sure they can have access to the assistance of which they require. I am happy to speak to the Minister of Labor, and you are happy to send a press inquiry on that particular point, and I'm sure the Minister of Labor will be happy to follow up in writing to provide you with any response on that from that department. But the work of which we've done thus far to make that more accessible, I'm sure will continue, and I'm certain that the Minister of Labor will do anything he can to ensure that persons inside of society can have the access to these benefits which are needed. That's it. Thank you very much. Members of the media, thank you for your questions. And Bermuda, I wish you a very wonderful evening. The government of Bermuda, welcome, will be back here. The Minister of Health and I will be back here next week, Tuesday, with an update on some of the matters of which I promised. And tomorrow, as stated, the Minister of Education, the Minister of Transport, and the Commissioner of Education will be here as well to make sure that they provide an update on what is going to take place next week with the reopening of schools, reviewing the transportation plans, and allowing members of the media to ask any questions on your behalf. Thank you, and good night. Bermuda.